All right, everyone. If you have never really used spreadsheets before or are feeling like you're not sure how to jump back in, this video tutorial is going to help with that. Okay, so if you look at something like this and you're like, what am I going to do? Let's start from the very beginning. Okay, so let's say this is your data set. Okay, you posted your data here before. I'm just going to copy the data, so I'm just going to kind of highlight it all. You might have it in a table, I'm not sure, but let's do that. So it's in the clipboard. I probably should have done this other step first. I'm going to go to Google Drive. So you'll want to go somewhere, maybe create like a chemistry folder, since I don't have a template for you in this case. But find a place, like create a place that's you'll be able to get back to. That's really the most important thing. If you can get back to it, then you won't lose the hard work that you're putting in right now. Okay, so go to New, go to Google Sheets, and here we go. Okay, so this is a spreadsheet. You'll notice that there's a whole bunch of options up top. Some of them are maybe familiar if you're used to using Google Docs, which you probably are a little bit. Some of them are unique though, right? Some of these are things that you won't see in a Google Doc generally. And it's because the spreadsheet it allows you to do different things than a Google Doc does in at least some significant ways. So what we're going to do is I have that data that I copied from Piazza, right? I copied my data. So I'm going to go back to my spreadsheet here, and I'm going to, I could just start here. I'm going to press paste. And there's the data, okay? One thing you might do by accident, or not by accident, you don't know, right? When you click, like when I'm clicking right now, I am single clicking. And I know that I'm single clicking. I can tell that because I don't see a cursor right here on the left side of this rectangular box. So each rectangular box is called a cell. And on the inside of the cell, I either see a cursor or I don't. If I don't see a cursor, it's because I single clicked. If I double click, I see a cursor. The reason that's significant is because if you double click, now I'm editing only what is inside this cell. So if I paste, all of my data is inside of the one cell. But I don't want that, right? I don't want all of my data to be right there. I want the data to be spread around throughout. I guess maybe sometimes you might want all the data to be in there, I suppose. I can even, there it is. This is tricky. Like this actually takes up more space up and down than I have on my screen. So I actually can't even really see everything that's in that one cell. This is not a very user-friendly way to use a spreadsheet. I really don't recommend this. So I'm going to undo a whole bunch of times. Control Z. So instead, I want to make sure that I'm single clicking. And now I'm just sort of like hovering over that cell. I'm not in it. I'm not editing the cell itself. So when I paste, I'm pasting over the general area. And wherever my active cell was, that was just the top left corner of the space I was about to paste into. Okay, so at this point, now you have all this data, and now you need to figure out, like, how do I view it all? Why is some of the data hidden, you know? And so one thing to notice is that these lines that separate the columns allow you to make columns wider, okay? You can make them as wide or narrow as you want. If you double click, so once my cursor turns into a little, when it turns into a hand, where's the hand? Come on, hand. That's because I'm actually changing something different. It allows me to to control which of these rows are frozen, it's called. That's sort of a different feature for later. You can do it over here too if you want. You can activate the hand here and move these over to freeze certain columns or rows if you want to do that. Okay. This can be really nice if you're working with data sets and you have like a column of data and you always want to see that one column, but you need to see everything else. But that column, you always want to see it. So you can freeze columns and cell and rows. Anyway, that was beside the point. When my cursor turns into a little arrow like this and I double click, then the system will automatically resize the column so that the words fit. Okay, I can also take something like this where like the words do not fit in the cell. So I could either double click and expand it, or I could, let's say I didn't want to take up so much space. I could click on I can click on the cell, or I can click on the whole column and go over here. This is called text wrapping. And this is going to be a really important feature for you if you write a lot in these cells, which you might. So text wrapping allows you to wrap the text so that instead of the text just continuing along left to right, it will wrap down to the next line whenever it reaches the end of the column. Okay, which means that if I move this closer, the text will continue wrapping and it will automatically expand how tall the cell is accordingly. Okay, so one quick and easy way to see all of the data is to select this cell or this right here. Clicking there selects everything you have. So if you do that and then go to text wrapping, then that allows you to make sure that none of the text is hidden. Okay, so now we probably want to resize some columns so that what we're looking at is maybe a little more user-friendly. And at this point, what you can do, like if there are instructions, like this was my instruction in the data table, you can probably take some of these instructions out because the instructions are no longer needed. They may not be needed for you to really represent what the data is in the column below. So if I delete this instruction, it's going to save me some space in this cell, which means I can actually bring that closer. And same with this, like this part of the instructions is not super important. So I can make that smaller. And I could also delete that instruction. So now I'm helping to compress my data into a smaller space. And that can be really nice when you really just want to make sure that like you just want to see what you need to see and you don't want it to take up tons of room. Okay. We have some data, and now we want to try graphing the data. Okay, so let's say, I'm not going to talk about variables right here really, because the part 2 video gets into variables a lot more, so I don't want to cover that here when you can watch it there. I do just want to show you though, that let's say I were to highlight this data, or let's say I were to highlight this data. Okay, you may not know why I'm highlighting this data yet, but watch more of the videos that start and maybe take some notes, like try and explain to yourself, like, why is he doing that way? Why did that happen that way? Right? Like ask those why questions and try and figure out like, why did that work that way? But for now, I'm just going to do that. There is a way to go to insert and insert chart. And this will actually allow you, the system on its own will make a chart for you. Okay. So the system made a pie chart, but I don't want a pie chart. In this case, for the assignment, I know that I need a scatter plot. I can make a bar chart, or I can make a scatter plot. Let's try and make a scatter plot. Okay, it looks like a scatter plot. Sure, maybe we're done, right? But let's take a look at this a little more closely. Okay. If you think about what you know about like an X and Y axis, you know that the X and Y axis, they both start at 0 at the origin, right? So for the Y axis, you increase and the numbers go up, right? And for the X axis, as you go to the right, the numbers should go up, right? Except they don't. So what's going on, right? You might even see something that looks like this, right? If I were to select this data and go to insert chart, right? You might see something that looks like this, where like you've selected data and the data is there, but it says there's no data. You could even look at this part of the chart editor, which maybe you don't understand, but you see that these cells are referenced. E2 and this colon means it's like E2 to E4, that range. So the double dots, the colon indicates a range. And so when I select a range like this, E2 to E4, this is E2 to E4. If I were to write an equation, E2 to, E2 to E4, right? I was able to write that as a formula, and the spreadsheet knew that I meant that range because that's what the colon means. And again, like the ability to type formulas like this into cells with an equation sign at the beginning is one of the really, really, really helpful things that makes a spreadsheet program really flexible. And it enables you to manage your data in really effective ways. Okay. So all that said, I don't have any data right here. So, but my chart editor said that I had data, E2 to E4. So here's the thing. When I want you to ask yourself, when you're watching this, I'm sorry. Oh, I've been doing so much talking today. My throat's getting hoarse. Okay. So you need to ask yourself, in this cell right here, are there numbers or letters or both? There's a number and there's letters. Okay. Here, there's only numbers. What if I just charted that, graph that? So there, I have what looks like charted data. Okay, even if I were to go in and change this so that it said the same thing that my other chart had. Ooh, interesting. So that's a different issue. In this case, we just selected some data, but the spreadsheet still says we have not enough data. Okay, so in the next video, this will get into what a series is. So if you're like, what is he doing? Oh, okay. So here's the thing. I just selected these cells and the system is saying invalid type. So we want to pay attention to what the error is saying because that'll inform us of what to do. The reason that I asked you earlier, is it a number or a letter, is because this is both. And if we're trying to put data on a numeric scale, then we need to make sure, like let's say I'm trying to put this back over here. This is a numeric scale, right? We also want a numeric scale on the x-axis because that'll help us make a graph. And so we need numbers, right? Only numbers. This spreadsheet system is not going to recognize 2 inches as a number. It recognizes it as a number plus letters, and it doesn't know what those letters mean. Inches is not defined somewhere, right? In the spreadsheet system, universally for every spreadsheet user. So what you do is just, you need to write inches in your label right here. And so then you know that everything below is measured in inches. And so as I do this, you'll see, I guess I don't need to do anymore. But you can see that now I could go in here and I could go back and I can measure. Well, maybe this will be easier if it'll be more confusing if I go back into the chart editor, but I think I'm going to just do this. I'm going to show you, if I were to select this data right here and then chart that, now I have data that has numeric values on the y-axis and the x-axis. Okay, and this is sort of your starting point. So this is where you want to get to be able to start making sense of what's happening in the next video. You just want to get to the point where you're seeing that when you set up a chart, you need all of your data to be in a format that the system can understand, that the spreadsheet system can understand. So if I'm using numbers and I want those numbers to be part of a number line, then I need to think about, so you'll need to think about this, like, what does no fog mean in terms of a number in inches? How many inches is no fog in a number form? 0. There's 0 inches. 0 inches means there's no fog. The diameter of the fog present is 0 because there is no fog, right? And so you want to do the same thing here. Instead of saying 73 Celsius, this is going to mean that you have 73, there's a number and a letter, or letters. And the spreadsheet system doesn't know what the word Celsius means. So you just have to write 73. And I'm just going to click and drag to copy that over. And so now I have all numbers. And that's going to be, this is where we need to start to get ready for the next video. So at this point, I'll just show you that if you were to highlight the whole chart and go to Insert Chart, then you get something that looks really wild like this. And it probably looks maybe kind of official. You're like, oh, you just made a chart. There's so much to it. And there is a lot of information here, but actually there's too much information here. Okay, there's too much information, and some of the information is in the wrong place. It's not in a place yet that's going to allow you to communicate some sort of conclusion or meaning or analysis from this data. So this is where I'm going to send you off to the next video and have you use the next video to try and then figure out, like, okay, I'm trying to tell the story of all this data and I selected it and I graphed it, so why can't I just use this to tell a story? The next video helps you start to digest that and start to understand more of what it is you're looking at, okay? And then the third video in this series is going to help you, once you kind of understand more about what the variables are, which are the independent variables, which are the dependent variables, what are the limitations of this current chart. Once you understand all that, then I'm going to break down how you then turn this into a series of scatter plots that will make a lot more sense, and that you will be able to use meaningfully. Okay, so I hope that was helpful, and I will see you in the next video.